All right, everybody, welcome into week one of our SBIR uh, 101 Accelerator. I don't know if I said good morning. I tend to do that. Good afternoon, and welcome into our Accelerator. So as we get started here, I'll just kick us off with a little bit of an introduction to me, a little bit about what I do, a little about what Arrowhead does. And I've actually got a couple of slides on that here. But real briefly, my name is John Waller. I'm a program manager here with the Arrowhead Center, and my job is to help small businesses that have innovative ideas. I've got two main tracks through which I do that. The first is what's brought us here today, actually. So New Mexico FAST, you see that down at the bottom of the slide. FAST stands for Federal and State Technology Partnership Program. And the idea is that the Small Business Administration, that's a federal agency, funds us at the Arrowhead Center to host the FAST program. And our job is to coach you through the SBIR and STTR process. And so SBIR and STTR, we'll get into the specifics on that in just a moment, but these are federally funded programs meant to increase research and development for small businesses. And we'll talk about the qualifications and how the program works and everything across these 5 weeks. We're going to touch on sort of the basics of what SBIR is today and then jump into it from there. And so the second thing that I do here is the New Mexico Small Business Assistance Program. And I always like to put in a plug for that because sometimes the businesses that come to us and talk to us here aren't quite ready for SBIR and STTR, but NMSBA, that New Mexico Small Business Assistance, might be a pretty good track for them. If they're at potentially a little bit smaller of a business, maybe they don't have quite as many partners, maybe their idea isn't necessarily a good fit for SBIR, but NMSBA is a program specific to New Mexico where our national laboratories, that's Los Alamos and Sandia, both work together to fund projects that help small businesses. So if you have some sort of technical challenge that you need to get through, the national laboratories will pay for a researcher to help you get past that technical challenge. They can do that in-house, or they can do that on one of their 4 contracting sites. And I get involved because New Mexico State University is one of the contracting sites. So I can connect you to any of the professors we have on campus and channel the funding through the labs to the professor to help you out. But that's a little bit about what I do here. And then I will open the floor if you are interested. I would encourage you or invite you to unmute and share a little bit about what it is that you do and who you are. I'll go down the list here, just calling out names, and if you want to speak up, please do. Looks like Fei Peng.
Yes. How about you, John?
Doing well, thank you. How are you?
I'm great. I think I have been listening to some of your seminar how,
Okay.
and occasionally, thank you for everything. And but in the same time, I have several projects, and I'm not sure exact feed, but in the same time, I know probably you guys do some hydrogen things. So I'm trying to see whether in your location or close to, some of the a hot area like a desert area, or can use you guys place run some like solar type, applications, energy saving, those kind of things. So that's why I'm thinking, certainly I'm trying to do the fundraising type of thing, how the government fund can be, funded to the project I'm trying to work on. Okay, thank you.
All right. Well, thanks. Welcome in. I know that Department of Energy is open right now. They opened a solicitation that's specific to data centers and quantum computing, things like that. But they should be opening up their standard solicitations hopefully soon. If not this month, maybe next month, we'll see that come out. So Keep an eye out for that. It looks like Jams. Feel free to unmute and come on if you'd like to say a little bit about what it is you're working on. If not, we'll go to Catherine. How are you, Catherine?
Hi, um, I'm a part of the FLC, which is the Federal Lab Consortium for Technology Transfer. And so essentially, I like to call us like a professional society for those that are in federal labs doing tech transfer work. And a lot of times we get questions on this process, and we aren't actually the folks that do any of this. So just trying to get a knowledge base when we're like exhibiting or people ask us questions where we can properly guide folks with these kind of questions that come up.
Awesome. Are you located in New Mexico?
No, we don't actually have like a standalone office, but I actually last fall went to Sandia and did a presentation on some of the offerings we have for Department of Energy folks. So, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, I was going to say that we actually have a train the trainer event coming up. And so, I mean, you'll get plenty of information from these 5 weeks, but I do have something else coming up that's specific for sort of people in that position that you described, where you're being asked
Okay.
about it, but it's not your main thing.
Got it. Perfect. Okay. I'll look out for that then.
Awesome. Yeah, send me an email after this, or I guess I have your email, and I'll give you some info about it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. How about Nicole? All right, maybe not. How about Sharon? How are you?
Hi, John. How are you? Good,
I'm doing well. How are you?
good, good. I'm doing fine, thanks. We're just about wrapping up everything with the NMSBA program, and I'll be ready to see if we can reapply to National Science Foundation or perhaps Department of Energy. And I'd like to just go back for a refresher and put everything together and see if we can submit some of the grant applications.
Awesome. Well, glad to have you here.
Thank you. Good to be here.
All right, and Tim, how about you? Feel free to unmute if you'd like to say a few words.
Sure, I can introduce myself, Tim Wallers, calling you from Green Bay, Wisconsin, actually, at the moment, but we don't have a brick and mortar location yet. My company, Quantum Radius, is interested in SBIR funding. We have made a partial effort in the past, and our focus for the company is visualization, image processing, video, targeting virtual reality headsets, remote piloting, and the like.
Awesome. Well, glad to have you. All right. Well, let me give you a little bit more information about Arrowhead, and this is the sort of umbrella organization that holds a bunch of different programs underneath it, including both the FAST program and the NMSBA program. But we are the economic development arm of New Mexico State University. And so through New Mexico State University, we're sort of stuck on the side. I think they call us our own college. We don't really teach any classes or anything. Our whole job is outreach. And so we have training assistants. We've got physical space. We host events. We've got commercialization assistants, accelerators, incubators, seed funds, all to help small businesses. And there are several different ways we do that and several different programs. I think we have close to 20 different programs at the moment. And so these are some of the offerings that we have. And I won't go through and read all of this to you. I'll send out the slides through a Google link for you later. You can go through and access that there. I'll also send out these recordings with that. But some of the things that we have, that training and assistance, you can see several different options for the training and assistance that we offer. We've got space, so this is physical space. You can rent from us or use it as a co-working location if you are in town. You just need a place to do some work. We do host events. There are a couple of pitch competitions. We have a larger event specifically for SBIR and STTR stuff that's coming up later in the year. So keep an eye out for that. It should be coming in December. Commercialization assistance. We put NMSBA under here. I think you could really put it under accelerators if you wanted to, but we've got that. We've got prototyping through our FIX program, that's Foster Innovation Exchange, and a couple of other programs we've got here as well. We have accelerators, so similar to what you are going through right now. We also have the sprints program. So if you are a small business, you're just getting started, maybe you're unfamiliar with some of the terminology, I really recommend that you check out the sprints program, and they can help you out with a lot of that. If you're a student or if you know any students, Aggie I-Corps is a really good opportunity for student entrepreneurs. As far as incubators, we've got a couple of offerings here as well, and then some seed fund opportunities over here. So what we're doing, and I've simply called it an accelerator when you signed up for it. We have historically called this an ACSA, which is just the Arrowhead Center SBIR Accelerator. And so what are the goals of this accelerator? First, we'd like to increase the number of quality proposals being generated by technology-focused startups. Next, we've got provide oversight and ownership for proposal processes. There are 11 different agencies that offer these funding opportunities, and they all act independently. So one of my roles here is I'm supposed to know all of the differences so that I can give you the information that you need to help you sort of sort out all of the noise and get exactly what you need as you're applying. We're hoping to drive the state of innovation and hopefully increase innovation and commercialization within the state. We want to demystify the SBIR proposal process. Again, there's a lot going on. It can be a little confusing at times. And then provide a structured system to explain the process and value of the program. And we'll get into why you as a small business might be interested in SBIR in just a little bit. So we've got 3 different versions of the ACSA. So we've got 3 different accelerators that we offer. The first, which really is the easiest for me to do, is the SBIR 101, which is a 5 to 6 week course. I tend to break it down to just 5 weeks. And then at the end, you should have a go, no-go answer to the question, is SBIR or STTR a good path for my business? And we also have a contracting ACSA, which I think we have starting in just a week or 2. We've got one going. We've hired that one out, so I'm not teaching that. But it gives a roadmap to commercialization. And so the idea is if you've gone through SBIR already, if you've already won those phase 2 awards, and I'll get into the phases in just a moment. If you've already made it through, what's next? How do you actually commercialize? How do you take this innovation that you've been working on for potentially 3, 4+ years and put it on the market? And so we're actually working with the Santa Fe Business Incubator on that one. And then we also have agency-focused ACSAs. Historically, we run these at about 12 weeks. A couple of those are just one-on-ones or opportunities for you to come in and have like office hours. But the idea is that over those 12 weeks, we break down the proposal writing process so that you have 12 weeks with supervision and with guidance to actually write a proposal that is then ready during the open period of the agency we're talking about. Historically, we lean into Department of Energy with that one, and we're doing that again this year. Things will look a little different with Department of Energy this year. They have gone through, and in this interim that we had earlier in the year, it started September last year, when SBIR was not authorized to continue, at least not yet. There was a lapse. They've sort of been behind the scenes working to reshape what their SBIR process looks like. And so we're going to see the brand new process coming out this year. If you're interested in Department of Energy, I would encourage you to go and look at their current solicitation. I believe it's, I believe they call it the Genesis project they're working on. But it's really all about AI and data centers and things like that. But the process that they are proposing that you're going to be using to apply is the same one that they have put out in this sort of pilot program through the active solicitation right now. So again, this is the one that we're actually doing right now. So what are the expectations from us to you? What do we expect you to do? First is to meet SBIR and STTR eligibility requirements. And we'll go over what that is in just a minute. But if you and your business don't meet those requirements, or you don't meet them right now and you're not interested in meeting them, I mean, if you are interested in meeting them, stick around. But I don't want to waste anybody's time. If this is not a good fit for you, that's okay if you drop off. I'm not going to be offended by that. Having an idea for an innovation that fits within the program. As we go along, we're going to talk about all the different agencies and what they're interested in. And if your innovation fits within any of those frameworks, and there are many because all 11 agencies have several different components and they're all, flooding into this one system. If you have an idea that fits, stick around. If you realize that your innovation probably is not going to fit within this program, same thing, I don't want to waste your time. You can hop off and that's okay. I want you to be active and engaged as a participant. Feel free to ask questions as we're going through this. I know it is quite a bit of information. Feel free to stop me at any point, ask those questions. I'm probably not going to see it if you simply just put it in the chat, but feel free to put it in the chat. I'll answer it later when we get to a break, or feel free to unmute and simply let me know you've got a question. And then I'm going to give you some tools and techniques. It's going to be your homework at the end of each of these sessions. Please take those, please use them however you'd like, in whatever way fits your business needs best. So in the upcoming weeks, each week we're going to focus on a broad area of importance for SBIR. We're also going to be doing some guided activities at the end of the week. That's the homework. And then we're going to meet every Tuesday for 5 weeks. So we've got 4 more of these after today. And we're going to meet at the same time using the same Zoom link. I'm going to send everybody a calendar invite after this so that you can add it to your calendars and make sure not to miss any sessions. If at any point you would like to schedule a one-on-one meeting, there's going to be a link at the bottom of my email. Feel free to click on that and schedule a time with me whenever it works. I will go ahead and tell you next week I'm going to be out of office. Still working, but just remotely. And so with that, it might be a little trickier to find a time to meet, but I'll still carve out some time if you'd like to meet and talk. So let's get into SBIR and STTR. So I'm going to throw around those abbreviations pretty frequently. And really, as we go through, if I say SBIR, there's a pretty strong chance that I'm referring to both. If there is something that is STTR specific, I'll highlight that. But as I go through, if I say SBIR, I'm usually talking about both. SBIR is the Small Business Innovation and Research Program. STTR is Small Business Technology Transfer Program. And so the question then becomes, why would you as a small business be interested in these funding opportunities? And the first, well, really the goals. I guess we'll start out with this. I think that what I was getting to is a later slide. I got ahead of myself. But the goals of SBIR and STTR, first is to meet federal R&D needs and provide research dollars to small businesses. We all know that large organizations, even privately owned businesses, can end up moving pretty slowly. And when you take that to the size of the federal government, they move at a snail's pace. But small businesses are fast. And so they are happy to fund small businesses to get the research and development that they need to continue moving forward on different missions or directives that they have. The second part here is it increases private sector commercialization. And of course, increasing commercialization is a boost to the economy, and a boost to the economy means more tax dollars that the government can then take from you on the back end. So it means more jobs and a whole bunch of other stuff as well. It really is a boost across the board. But of course, there's also just a little bit that they're going to take back at the end. It stimulates technological innovation. I'm going to really group 3 and 4 here together. It also fosters and encourages participation, innovation in entrepreneurship. There are a lot of people that have really good ideas and they just don't have the support or they don't have the backing to take the leap of faith and really try to commercialize, try to create their innovation. And so this is an opportunity for them to sort of take that leap of faith, take that next step, assuming they apply and everything works and they can move forward. This is a funding path that can let them test their ideas in a phase 1 and then actually create that innovation in phase 2. And then the last piece here is really more specific to STTR. It's to foster technology transfer through cooperative R&D between small businesses and research institutions. Many research institutions, and that could be universities, it could be national laboratories, really any, and the definition here of a research institution is any nonprofit with a research focus. They're creating things all the time, and some of those things might be commercially viable, but nobody who works in the research institution wants to take it out and start a business and go through all of that effort to make it commercially available. And so the idea is through an STTR that small businesses have the opportunity to partner with those research institutions and take the technology that's just sitting on their shelves, it's collecting dust, bring it out, make it commercially viable, and start selling it. So here's the program eligibility piece. First, your business has to be for profit. If you are a nonprofit, this line of funding is not for you. You also have to be located in the United States. And for many of these agencies, the work must be done in the United States as well. You must be more than 50% owned and controlled by either one or more individuals that are citizens or permanent residents in the United States. If there's ownership by other small businesses, they have to follow those same guidelines that more than 50% ownership of those other controlling small businesses must be controlled by individuals that are citizens or permanent residents in the US. And then to qualify as a small business, and this is sort of funny for a lot of the people that we work with, you must have no more than 500 employees. And that sounds massive to the majority of our clients. And you don't have to worry about that. The majority of these funds go to businesses that have roughly 10-ish people, somewhere between 5 and 10 people working on it. So the 500 is a pretty big number, especially compared to a lot of the people that are actually winning. So you must have a focus on R&D, but you also have to have commercialization as a goal in your business. This is not strictly R&D money. So here we are in the why you might be interested in SBIR category. First, this is equity-free investment in your company. The government does not want to own any part of it. They want to give you money to get off the ground for the economic reasons that we talked about earlier. Of course, creating jobs, building up businesses, making sure that the US is on the leading end of technology, but also you're answering a problem that they have. It's a need that the government has realized that is apparent to them that they want to fund someone to find the solution. And this is an opportunity for you to get equity-free investment. It allows you to demonstrate the feasibility of your idea. So the very first phase is feasibility testing. Of course, you have to have some background information as to why you think that it's worth testing. But that first phase, you don't have to create a product. You really are doing feasibility testing for your idea. It allows you to start building a team and to build your company. You might not have very many people that are interested in working with you right now, and especially if you don't have any real way to pay them. But this funding opportunity uh, allows you to start paying salaries for people to come and help. And so that might be what gets some people, over the line to start working with you. And so it helps you build up your company that way. It can help provide some due diligence for follow-on funding. Um, if you are working with the government, this opens the door for you to get other types of contracts that are easier for you because you've already jumped through all the hoops. You've already cut through all the red tape. You've made it through and proven that you're worth funding. And so the government will fund you a little easier on your next round, assuming you're successful. And then it kind of varies by investor, but some investors will look at this and say, well, you've had all this extra funding, you've done all this extra work, and that is you de-risking the investment. And so they're happier to jump on board with you after you've de-risked it a little bit. And it, sort of it makes it an easier investment for them. It allows you to map your product and value proposition to your intended customers. It is very important that you understand that commercialization must be part of your plan. And so this funding opportunity actually has a little bit on the side if you're interested in getting some outside help for some commercialization pieces. There are also some tangential opportunities. I don't know if you've ever heard of I-Corps, but I-Corps is an opportunity that sort of runs side by side with SBIR, that if you're looking for customer discovery, if you want to learn a little bit more about that, see who your customers are, your end users, is there a difference between the customer and end user? I-Corps really helps you out with that. And we actually have a version of that here at NMSU. If you're interested, let me know. I can connect you to the program manager who runs that. It reduces your need to self-fund. Obviously, if you're getting funding from the government, you don't have to pay into all of the research. You do get IP and data rights, but the way that it's done is it just keeps it a secret. Hold on, just the IP and data rights that you receive from the SBIR and STTR programs is really it's a trade secret. And so what the government is promising is that, as long as you keep it a secret, they'll keep it a secret. You obviously can't sell a trade secret, and you can't, license it out or anything like that. So there's still benefit to having, patents and trademarks and all that. But there are some people that would advise that you just don't go for patents and trademarks and anything of that sort, and that you just keep innovating. And if you're always the first mover, if you're always the first person on the scene, then you get the first mover advantage. And by the time anybody else tries to mimic you, you're already on to the next. So a couple of ways to think about it, but they'll keep your secret for up to 20 years before they release anything, which is the same time frame that you get with a patent. The difference is a patent, you have to tell everybody exactly what it is that you're doing and why yours is different. And a patent gives you the right to litigation, but litigation is still pretty expensive. So if a large company tries to come in and take your idea through a patent, there's the risk of you getting buried under all the legal fees that it would take to actually take them to court, as opposed to keeping everything a secret. A couple of ways to think about it there. I'll let you figure out what's best for you and your business. It also positions you as a sole source government contractor, meaning that if you, with your innovation, at any point in the future, find a component of the federal government that is interesting in purchasing from you, you don't have to go through the standard contracting procedure. You simply talk to the agency that is ready to purchase from you, and you can create that purchase agreement right there between the two of you. It also opens you up for phase 3, which we'll get into the different phases in just a moment, but there is an opportunity for phase 3 where if you start in SBIR, it's either phase 1 or phase 2, and you talk to an agency later that without SBIR dollars, so nothing earmarked for SBIR, if they are interested in continuing the work that you started through SBIR, they're able to write you up a contract or a grant or some funding avenue for you to continue doing that work as long as that money is not coming through SBIR. And it's considered a phase 3. So again, a couple things to think about, and these are some of the benefits of using SBIR and STTR. So what are the differences? SBIR supports R&D of innovative technologies, and really they both do. But SBIR is designed for you to use technology that you created. STTR is a sister program that's designed for you to cooperate with research and development teams at universities to be able to usually pull technology out of other universities or national laboratories, really any of the research institutions, of course, that being nonprofit with a research focus, and to pull that technology out and commercialize it. I believe that was the original intent, but that's not the standard way that I see STTRs being used. Most of the people that are interested in STTR, they have their own idea, but they just need more support. And you can get more support from STTR than you can through SBIR. And we'll talk about that in just a minute. There's approximately 3.8 billion set aside for SBIR annually. There's about 518 million set aside each year for STTR. And the way that these two come about is through SBIR, any agency that reaches $100 million per year in their extramural research and development budget, they are required to set aside 3.2% for SBIR. So it's 3.2% of that agency budget. And so you'll see each agency has a different budget and how much they're working with. But they have to set aside a little bit for SBIR. If that agency gets so large, they have $1 billion per year in their extramural R&D budget, they have to set aside 0.45% for STTR. And so through that, you'll see that all the agencies that participate in STTR also participate in SBIR, but not vice versa. And so even with the research institution being involved, it could be SBIR or STTR, the small business is always going to be the applicant. It's always going to be the awardee. So the funding is always going to flow through the small business. It's always going to be on the small business to keep track of all the expenses, to keep track of the work, to manage the program or the project that's being done. And so here we see the differences in the work allocation. So SBIR, the small business has to do at least 67% of the work, and they are allowed to subcontract out 33% of the work. But that 33% is optional. Small business could do 100% of the work if you have the capacity to do it. If you have the facilities, if you have the equipment, if you are able to simply rent the facilities and equipment. If you have the expertise in-house, you're more than welcome to do it all on your own. STTR is a little bit different. So the research institution is required to do 30% of the work. The small business is required to do 40% of the work, which leaves a discretionary 30% here in the middle. That could go to the research institution, it could go to the small business, or it could go to a third party if you needed some other services that you needed to hire out. And so we've got a couple of other differences here. We talked about SBIR allows you to partner, but doesn't require it. STTR does require you to partner. If you are the principal investigator for SBIR, you must be primarily employed by the small business. The principal investigator for STTR could be employed primarily through small business or through the research institution. There are some odd cases where you might have a co-PI, so principal investigator from both, but generally it's going to be one or the other. The work requirements in an SBIR is what we just looked at. You're allowed to outsource up to 33% in a phase 1, up to 50% in phase 2. In an STTR, the minimum work requirement of the small business is 40%, and of the research institution is 30%, so there's 30% that could go either way. There are no IP documents required in an SBIR. The reason here is that the SBIR expects that you as a small business are doing the majority of the work. If you're doing the majority of the work, it's very hard for anyone else to claim ownership of your IP. It is encouraged, though, if you are working with a research institution or really with anybody else, if you're contracting out some work, that you have some documents signed, NDAs or anything like that that you might need to feel safe. Probably talk to a lawyer about that before moving forward. Through STTR, you are required to have formal IP documents. And the reason that this is important is because if you are working with a research institution, and especially if you are working with a research institution that created the technology that you are trying to commercialize, that research institution is entitled to intellectual property. It could be all of it, it could be part of it. It really depends on how much you're doing to that technology. But you'll want to have those documents signed to protect you and what the small business owns so that that research institution can't try and claim it all later. They can't sort of suck it all in and claim it all for themselves. In SBIR, there are 11 participating agencies, and then of those 11, 6 are large enough to participate in STTR as well. And then we talked about the program size is approximately 3.8 billion for SBIR and approximately 518 million for STTR. So these are the phases that I keep mentioning. And phase 0 and phase 3 are not technically part of SBIR, but we sort of group those in as, it all just flows along. And so what I mean by that is phase 0 is any assistance that you receive prior to a phase 1. So if you are working with me to get your application put together for SBIR, that could be phase 0 assistance. If you are interested in Department of Energy, they actually have a dedicated phase 0 program. So if it's your first time applying and you're interested in Department of Energy, you can apply for the Department of Energy phase 0, and they will coach you through the process of applying specifically for Department of Energy. If you work with us, you can get microgrants. Other support organizations that you might be interested in talking to could be Apex Accelerators. Actually, I'll send out a link to their website after this. I think that they're a great resource for a lot of people. But Apex Accelerators, you might be working with a small business development center. You might be working with, really just a whole host of other support organizations. But any assistance you get prior to that phase 1 would be considered phase 0. Phase 1 is funded through SBIR, and this is concept development or feasibility testing. And then the funding amount can range anywhere between 75,000 on the low end up to 306,000 on the high end. And it could be anywhere between 3 to 12 months for the period of performance. There's about a 15% success rate. Each agency is going to be a little bit different in that success rate, but generally it's about 15%. If you make it through phase 1, you can apply to phase 2. In your phase 2, you have prototype development is really the main focus. And you get quite a bit more money and a much longer time period to work. So it's up to $400,000 up to $2 million. And you usually get 24 months. So you usually get about 2 years as your period of performance. And the idea is that at the end, you have a minimum viable product that you're able to start selling, start using, in whatever capacity makes sense for you and your business. It's about a 45% success rate on those submissions. So we'll see not everybody who goes through a phase 1 is going to be able to get that phase 2, but it is clearly a much higher success rate than going into a phase 1. So if you get through a phase 1, there's a good chance you'll get a phase 2. Many agencies will also offer a second phase 2 opportunity. They might have a different funding amount, and they might come with other requirements. It could be some external funding sources, a matching fund, things like that. So depending on the agency you're talking to and who you're working with, there's an opportunity for a phase or a second phase 2. And then we get to phase 3. So this is not funded by SBIR. At this point, you're beyond the scope of the SBIR program. And phase 3 looks a little different depending on who you're talking to. There are two opportunities here. The first is simply your commercial success. So if you've created your minimum viable product and you release it to the market and you start taking up market share, that is commercial success, or your commercialization. That is phase 3. But there is the other opportunity that I mentioned previously, where you've gone through phase 1, maybe you make it through phase 2, you don't have to go through both, and you find a different government agency that's interested. They have what's called phase 3 authority, and they can create a new funding opportunity for you that's outside of the scope of SBIR. So that's an opportunity for you, but most people, even in the government, don't know that it's a possibility. So the people that I've found that are the most knowledgeable about it are really the folks in Department of War, usually Army. I hear Army people talk about it a lot. Anytime they have a representative that goes to any of these conferences, Army's always talking about phase 3. So that might be an opportunity for you if you don't know how else to get anybody interested in phase 3 in the federal government. You might reach out to small business support offices through the Department of the Army, or go on their website. They have a lot of information there as well. These are the agencies that participate in SBIR. So all of these participate in SBIR. Those that are in the sort of silver gray color also participate in STTR. One quick note, I guess two pieces here. The Department of Commerce does not have its own SBIR. Instead, they break it across NIST and NOAA. So NIST and NOAA act independently. So if you're interested in working with NIST or interested in working with NOAA, you'll go to those websites directly and not to the Department of Commerce. But technically, both of those agencies are housed under the Department of Commerce. Another thing that I wanted to note here is the Department of Health and Human Services. If you try to look for their SBIR, it's not on Health and Human Services website. So the Health and Human Services SBIR is actually housed under NIH, so the National Institutes of Health, and we'll see that a little bit later. So here are all of those agencies, and we're just breaking it down so you can see the different components of those agencies that all participate in SBIR. And so we have, Department of Commerce broken down to NIST and NOAA. They actually act independently. The rest of these do not. So if you're looking for, again, Health and Human Services, which is housed under NIH, all of these different components are feeding into what they call the omnibus, which is just the name for their solicitation. Department of Energy has all these different pieces that are under the Department of Energy. Department of War has 14 different components, all working to feed in their problems and their needs. What they have found to be a problem, they're feeding into the solicitation. So if your innovation fits into any of these, or is a technology that any of them might be interested in, there's a strong chance that SBIR will have an opportunity for you. Now, these funding opportunities come in two main forms. There are grants and there are contracts. And on the next slide, I'll show you which agencies use grants and which ones use contracts. But I just wanted to give you a quick distinction between the two. So grants are generally less specific. They'll have broader topics on the solicitation. Contracts are going to be very highly focused. In grants, you're going to see a flexible design to provide funding to support a public purpose, as opposed to a contract, which usually has a buyer and seller type agreement. And you'll see on the next slide when I show you these agencies, usually a contract is going to be between a buyer and seller, right? They have a problem that they need fixed today, and they're giving you 3 years to do it. But they have a problem that they have identified that they need a solution for, and they're sending out a call to small businesses to try and find someone that can fix it. As opposed to grants, generally they see sort of a societal problem, or maybe it's a direction that they want technology to move into. They're not interested in purchasing it from you, but they want to see the technology developed. The principal investigator under a grant has much more freedom to develop the scope of work. Under a contract, the scope of work is fairly inflexible. Under grants, you have a little bit more flexibility in how you use the funds. You know, if things don't go well and you need to shift and pivot a little bit in the experiments you're doing, you're welcome to do that. Under contracts, the payments are going to be based on deliverables and milestones that you put into the contract and that you've negotiated with the agency you're working with. A grant is going to require your best effort in research. A contract is going to require that you produce the goods and services that you have promised. Grants allow you to ask questions all the way up until the period that you submit your application. Contracts generally are not going to allow you to communicate with them during the open period. So they typically have a pre-release where they tell you what the topics are, but they don't open up the website for you to submit an application yet. And so you can have private conversations during that window. But as soon as the website is open for you to apply, any communication is going to be made public. So it's going to be put on a public forum. And then finally, in a grant, the applicant defines the scope of work. And then in a contract, usually the government is defining the scope of work, or at least they're very heavily guiding the scope of work. And here we see the different agencies and which type of funding opportunity they provide. I will point out here, HHS is a little bit weird. They do both. I won't read all these out to you. You'll have the slides, and I think that you can spot the one that you're interested in pretty quickly here. So let's talk about innovation. We're going to talk about innovation, a little bit about commercialization. But first, innovation is going to have a different definition depending on the agency that you're working with. And that agency is going to be creating a definition based on their current mission directives, needs, and budget. It doesn't always have to be something that's high-tech and novel. A lot of the agencies will tell you that that's what they're looking for, but it doesn't have to be. It could be that you're working on a new product. It could be a process, could be a service that you're creating. And then innovation can come through creativity, could come through the impact, scalability. As long as it's solution oriented, you might be looking at an innovation. Some of these agencies, USDA and Department of War, are good examples here, but they will allow you to use commercial off-the-shelf technology in some of their topics. And so we abbreviate that down to COTS, but that just means that something's already been created that you are taking and using in a purpose it was not originally intended for. And that would be commercial off the shelf. You may be familiar with this classification scale already. This is a TRL, or Technology Readiness Level. This was created by NASA, which when I initially learned that, I was a little surprised about how commercial focused or commercialization focused NASA really is. But we'll see even in their solicitations for SBIR, they really want to get stuff out the door. They try to commercialize as quickly as possible. But TRL is going to be a scale 1 through 9 that gives you a way to quickly communicate to whoever it is you're talking to what level of innovation you are in. Generally, TRLs 1 through 3, and you can see on the table what each of the different levels actually means. But 1 through 3 is generally considered research, 4 through 6 generally is development, and then 7 through 9 is going to be deployment. If you are somewhere in about 2, 3, or 4, I would say that grants are probably a better option for you, just because you do have some more flexibility. If things go wrong, you can adjust the scope and just reach out to whoever the program manager is to tell them that something went wrong, you're going to have to shift it a little bit. If you're a little farther along, if you're about 4, 5, 6-ish, it might be a better option for you to look at contracts, just because if you are tied to specific milestones and deliverables, it may be easier for you to hit those if you're a little bit farther along. Once you start getting into about 7, 8, 9, are generally a little farther along than SBIR is looking for. That being said, there are still ways to get into SBIR, but you might have to adjust your scope and sort of reframe the work that you're doing. Now, commercialization is going to be a very important part of SBIR. Of course, that is one of the frameworks that they're working with. And this is, the process of bringing your technology to market. Of course, there's a big emphasis on this. And so they are looking for the commercial potential of your technology. And then commercialization must be a goal of the business. So the potential for your technology in the market. And so they will ask you, all of these agencies will ask you about your commercialization plan, your commercialization pathway, and we'll introduce those ideas just very briefly today, and talk a little bit more about what those agencies are looking for later on one of our later sessions. But generally speaking, it will be important for you to familiarize yourself with commercialization and some of those ideas. This is a chart that was created by the Department of Energy. It has not been widely adopted, but I think that it is still a good framework to use if you are looking at the market and you're looking at your technology and trying to figure out, what kind of barriers there are between you and commercial success. And so what it does, if you see on the left on this vertical piece, you've got your TRL, it's your technology readiness level. And then you've got on your horizontal piece down here, the adoption readiness level. And so the framework that we just talked about, that TRL, you can pretty quickly figure out where you sit on this table or on this figure here on the chart. Chart's a good word for it. The adoption readiness level piece is actually a little bit harder to calculate. So it takes into consideration 14 different aspects of the market that you'll have to go in and calculate yourself. But it gives you a numeric value at the end that helps you figure out not only how far along you are in creating your end product, but also how willing the market is to accept your product. And that's really what you're measuring here with the adoption readiness level. How many different sort of hurdles are you going to have to jump to get to the market? And so if you're interested in this, the Department of Energy has some pretty good resources, and they've got the calculator for you to help you out as you try and figure out that adoption readiness level. Now, we're not going to get deep into these concepts, but I do want to introduce them to you. The commercialization plan is going to be very important. And a lot of the people that come to us, a lot of our clients, are experts in the field in what it is that they do and what it is they're creating, but they may not be experts in sort of these business concepts and these commercialization ideas. And so just a brief introduction to them. You're going to want to understand a value proposition, and that's how are you different than everybody else on the market? So what are you doing that nobody else is doing? Why would people choose you over somebody else? Your business model, which is how are you going to create, deliver, and capture value? You'll need to have some framework for that. Your customer discovery, you're going to want to actually talk to people. And don't just send out a mass survey to a bunch of people and hope you get some responses, but actually sit down in interviews and do customer discovery with people that you think are going to purchase your product and with the people that you think have the problem that your innovation is solving, and figure out if what you're creating actually solves their problems and if what they're willing to pay actually fits your business model and how much you're going to need to make off of each purchase. And then finally, your path to market. So consider direct sales, licensing the technology, potentially selling or exiting the business. And then potentially forming strategic partnerships. So if you have a device that maybe one of the primes are interested in, so if you're selling to, Boeing or Raytheon or Honeywell or any of those. Figure out, are you working on a strategic partnership? Are you licensing your technology, or are you simply selling that intellectual property to them for them to work on? Having an idea of each of those is going to be important because many of the agencies actually require a dedicated section in your proposal that is the commercialization section. And they have different names, but Department of War, Department of Energy, NASA, NIH, and NSF all have dedicated sections specifically for your commercialization plan. And others, all of the others are going to ask you about it, but they may not have a dedicated section for it yet. Actually, I anticipate seeing some changes here and that more agencies will have dedicated sections soon. So when you are thinking through that commercialization piece and you are thinking about the commercial viability, we've got some questions here for you to consider. What is the demand? And how did you validate that demand? So third-party options are great if you want to get some rough numbers. So if you just were to Google the market size of the market that you're in, that's great. But the actual numbers that you can get and the actual data that you can get from talking to people is going to give you far better and far more realistic and accurate information compared to any of those third-party sources. Do people need the product or service? So it gets into a question of, is this a luxury or is it a necessity? Of course, what's the market size? How many people are willing to purchase it? What are the involved economic factors? How can you reliably reach your customers? So what avenue are you going to get in front of the people that you expect to purchase? What does the market saturation look like? Is there nobody in the market? Are you the first mover? Or are you competing in a space that has several other people also in it, competing for the same customers? What does your competitive landscape look like? What is the acceptable price? And you're going to figure that out by doing math, of course, when you're in to figure out how much you need to make off of each purchase, but also talking to potential customers and figuring out what solving their problem is worth to them. So what do they value it at? And the final piece here is how much are people willing to pay for your solution? Ideally, you figure out how much people are willing to pay and you find a way to still make money charging just a little bit less. And then that way your customer walks away feeling like they got a deal and you walk away with a little bit of profit in a perfect world. As a small business, that's probably not going to be how you get started, but down the road, something to think about. I'm going to take a quick pause right here and just see if there are any questions. Taking a look here in the chat. If any of you have questions, please feel free to speak up. Let me know. Back during introduction, somebody was in the library and couldn't unmute. But they're in a partnership manager. They are a partnership manager with Federal Laboratory Consortium. Oh, okay. Oh, I see. Okay. And then the Department of Energy application that was mentioned. Thank you, Catherine, for putting that in the chat. And I don't hear anyone asking questions. So we'll jump right back in. In the proposal writing process, we've simplified it down. This is going to be a very short and sort of quick version of what you're actually going to go through. But the first thing that you'll need to do is determine eligibility. And so we've talked about those eligibility requirements. You have to be a small business, so that's 500 employees or less, be for profit, be primarily owned by U.S. citizens. The work has to be done in the U.S., and the principal investigator must be primarily employed by the small business. That is specific for SBIR, but it's common across both SBIR and STTR. There is an option in the STTR to have a principal investigator from the research institution. Then you're going to develop an innovative idea. And I would actually say that this is probably the first thing that's going to happen. If you have an idea, you're probably going to have that idea before you start looking at SBIR at all. But we'll put that as step 2 here. Develop your innovative idea. So have an idea for some technology, some innovation that is going to fit within the framework. You want to develop your commercialization pathway. You don't have to have all of the answers, especially if you're working on a phase 1. You know, during a phase 1, you don't even know if your idea is worth pursuing to create um, a real product. And so, you know, have an idea for the commercialization pathway, have some foundation for why you believe that that will work, but you don't have to have all the answers yet. Then complete your registrations, and there are several. The first is SAM, I believe it's sam.gov. And that's System of Award Management is what that stands for. But if you are interested in doing any work with the government at all, and you want them to pay you, you'll need to be registered on SAM. So maybe go ahead and work on that, even if SBIR isn't something that you are particularly interested in, or maybe you decide that this isn't the right path for you. But if you want to do any contracting later on, SAM is going to be important for you in your business. Through sam.gov, you'll get your unique entity identifier. That's the UEI. And you'll need the UEI for your other registrations. The Small Business Administration also wants you to register with them. And you'll do that through SBIR.gov. And that's just a way for them to track how many SBIR awards your business has received. Then there are also agency-specific registrations, and that'll be on a case by case. Do you need it or not? And so we'll actually talk about that in later sessions. Determine your topic fit and talk to the agency. Please reach out to the agency. As soon as you have figured out that you are interested in SBIR, really, you can do this before any of your registrations, or maybe while you're waiting on the registrations. I mentioned SAM is going to be your first one. It actually takes the longest, up to 6 weeks. I think I usually see people talk about it in about 2 weeks, but it could take up to 6 weeks for them to get back to you to give you all the paperwork that you need. But in that time frame, you're more than welcome to reach out and talk to agency representatives. Absolutely reach out and talk to me if you think that you're on the right track and you just want an extra set of eyes, or maybe you want someone to help explain the different agencies and the different topics that those agencies are interested in. I can help you out with that. But the best information that you can get is by going directly to the agency and saying, hey, this is what we do. I believe that your agency is a good fit. I'm thinking about applying under this topic. What do you think? And then sit back and listen. Of course, they'll probably have some questions for you, but getting that feedback directly from the funding source is going to give you far more than what I can give you. And you're going to have to put together your proposal package. Across the board, this is going to look like a technical proposal. So you're going to have to explain what it is you're doing. You'll need to bring together the resumes for everybody. You'll need to explain the facilities that you're working in. You'll need to show the budget justification, and they're going to do some additional documents as well. But what all these different sections are called might be different between the agencies, but by and large, all the agencies are going to have these sections. Then after you have it written, get a review and get somebody that's going to be a little bit mean to do the review, somebody that's outside of your organization. If you have somebody that's inside of your organization, there's a good chance that if there are gaps where a reviewer might have questions, the person who works beside you on the next cubicle over, the next desk over, who you are on Zoom with weekly, probably will just automatically fill in that gap the same way that you would if you're reading your own work. So get somebody that's outside of your organization, and get somebody that it's not going to sugarcoat it. Get somebody that is going to go through with a red pen, circle things that they think are wrong, write notes in the margins, and really push you, because you want them to do that before you submit. If you submit and there are holes and there are questions that the reviewer has, with a 15% success rate, you are probably not going to make it to the next stage. They're probably not going to reach out to you and ask for clarification. They'll probably just move on to the to an application from somebody that doesn't have any gaps or holes. So that's my advice to you there. I can read it for you if you would like. That's one of the services that we have, of course, at no cost to you. If you'd like an extra set of eyes, send it out my way, and I'm happy to take a look at it. Then you'll submit. Please submit at least a day before, preferably a couple days in advance. We have heard a lot. It's not an overwhelming majority, but it's more common than it should be that an agency will, excuse me, an applicant, one of our clients, will apply, and then they wait to the very last minute, at the very last second, they're trying to hit submit, and there are so many other people that did the same thing that the website crashes, and you don't get any extra time to submit. It's just gone at that point. We've also heard that teams that will split up the work and delegate out different pieces, which is a good plan. You should do. If you try to wait to the last minute to compile everything, we've seen this happen where somebody maybe didn't understand the instructions very well, or they just didn't have time to get to it, and they didn't reach out to somebody else to get some extra support fast enough. And then when you go to compile everything, you submit it to the agency and realize that pieces are missing. And so either you don't get to submit or you get administratively rejected before anybody ever reads your application. You really don't want that to happen. After you submit, you're going to wait. And it is not uncommon for you to wait up to 6 months to hear back. And so the SBIR opportunity is a fantastic option, but do not let this be the only thing that you are counting on to move you forward. Let this be one of the funding opportunities that you're chasing, because it does take some time. So we'll talk a little bit about innovation and challenges, and we're going to start out with companies that were successfully funded through SBIR. I just saw a couple of messages in the chat. I was going to pause here real quick. Nicole actually says she's happy to connect to the community. She's been awarded multiple NSFs, phase 1 and phase 2s. And so she put her LinkedIn there in the chat if anybody's interested in reaching out to her. Actually, Nicole, I might reach out and have you talk on a different session at some point if you wanted to stay in contact. Awesome. Okay. So we'll jump back in here. These are a couple of the businesses that have gone through SBIR before and that have survived and made it and are fairly large names that you probably have seen before. And the one that we're going to really dive into here is going to be iRobot. So iRobot has, and this slide is a little bit old. I haven't kept up with them recently, but they had won 30 Department of Defense awards between 2001 and 2001 and 2009, totaling a little over $10 million. And so they really were able to use SBIR, 17 SBIR phase 1s and 8 SBIR phase 2s to be specific, to grow their business and to develop their technology, and have grown to a company that's in excess of 450 employees. So they probably have more than what is considered a small business by this point. Now, you might be thinking, how did a little vacuum cleaner get so many Department of War awards? And it's because they started with bomb robots. And so these robots were designed to keep soldiers safe, to go and investigate potential bombs, and potentially move them out of the way or pick up pieces and keep soldiers safe. And this technology developed for the Department of War, and obviously successful through Department of War, was then later commercialized and sent out to the private sector to to create the vacuum that we all now know. And so the technology that you're creating, you might be creating it for one purpose and then find that it actually solves people's problems somewhere else. And that's a really good example of what they call dual use technology, where, and the Department of War talks about this a lot through all of their different components, but they want you to have technology that fixes the problem that they have, but can also be used outside of that specific application to be commercially successful elsewhere. They don't want Department of War to be your only avenue for revenue. So why is there this emphasis on innovation? Innovation is the foundation of SBIR and STTR. The technology that you're bringing in should be new, novel, and unique. And the innovation helps companies grow and scale. So I mentioned this idea earlier that as long as you continue to innovate, you will always be the first mover. And if your business is always the first mover, everybody else who comes behind you is just replicating the work that you've already done. And if all things go well, one of the strategies that you will be using here is that by the time all of your competitors catch up and they can finally create or recreate what you have already sold, you're off to the next. And so everybody's behind you trying to catch up, and they're never on the forefront. So you're getting to scalp the market in all of your new technology, and then everybody else can pick up the crumbs after you're gone and start your next innovation. These new ideas lead to other products, and of course, one innovation opens the door for the next innovation, so on and so forth. And just as I mentioned earlier that the federal government moves pretty slowly, large businesses also move very slowly, and it's hard for them to innovate. So small businesses innovate, large businesses acquire. It's a pretty common thing that you'll hear just when you're going down commercialization and the sort of innovation and business route. The technological challenge focus. So why does there have to be some technological challenge? SBIR, most of the agencies require that you address or solve some sort of technical challenge through your feasibility testing. So through that phase one. And they really want you to think about high risk, high reward type innovations. They all claim that that's what they want. Many of them, especially contracting agencies, really need a problem to be solved, and so they're not necessarily after high risk, high reward. But agencies like NSF will fund what they think is cool, and so you have to be working on something that they have not seen before for them to be interested. And so there's always going to be some kind of technical challenge when you're applying to SBIR. One of the things that SBIR is meant to support is an innovation where nobody else really wants to touch it, where other investors may not be ready to take the risk to work with you. SBIR will. And then the final piece that I'll touch on here is they don't want something that's an iterative process. So if you have an innovation already and you are interested in making some changes and you're looking for research and development funding to make some changes, but you really know what's going to work, they're not particularly interested in that type of project. So they're really more interested in something that has a real chance of not working. That's what they want to fund. So we've made it pretty close to the end here. That's the new information that I'm giving you all. Do we have any questions about that information before we get into activities and homework? I'll give you just a couple seconds to unmute, type in the chat. Let me know if you have any questions. I don't see any popping up. So we'll go ahead and move forward with this. One of the goals for your business, and this is going to be the homework for this week, is the ability to describe your technology and your innovation in about 2 sentences. And really, what I would like you to do is break it down into 1 sentence. And so I'll give you the framework to do that. But the reason is you don't have much time on your very first encounter with somebody to get your point across. And so you need to efficiently be able to say, this is who we are, this is what we do, this is who we help, this is why you should care. And we've given you this Mad Lib style framework to be able to do that. Now I'm actually going to give you 2 frameworks for this. This will be the first one. But I'll send this to you, and I want you to actually fill this in and actually send it to me. And I'll give you some feedback on it. And next week, I'll give you an opportunity to share with everybody what your Mad Lib looks like. But you'll say, my company, and then have the name of your company, is developing, and then a very brief definition of what it is you're offering to help describe who it is you're helping, and really focus in on one customer segment. So who is it that you're helping? Solve a problem. So what is the problem that you're helping them get through with, and then some aspect of the technology that you're actually going to help out with. It says secret sauce here. You don't really want to give away your secret sauce. This is all your intellectual property. You don't want to give away all of that, but give some hint as to what it is that your technology actually produces or is working with. That will give some credibility and show your sort of background and area of expertise as to why you actually can solve a problem for the audience you've described. All right. And so this will very quickly get your point across and help you out when you are talking to potential partners, potential customers. And you can plant that seed for them to ask follow-up questions if they're interested. But you don't want to walk into every scenario trying to give a 10-minute pitch to everybody, and the majority of people are not going to be interested. But if you can do it in a sentence, that'll give the opportunity for follow-up questions, which will open the door for more conversation later. This is the second framework that I would like to show you. So I actually took this from Alex Hormozi, if you've seen any of his stuff, and he calls this the value equation. And so he shows that in any business, if you're trying to sell anything to anybody, you need to be able to show the dream outcome, the perceived likelihood of success, time delay, and sacrifice and effort. And what he's getting at here, or what this framework is trying to show, is your dream outcome and the perceived likelihood of success need to be as big as possible trying to sell your idea. So as you're selling this dream outcome and the likelihood of success, you really need to upsell that. Now, don't lie to anybody, don't lie to your customers, but make sure that this is emphasized. And then follow that up. You do need to let them know what the time delay is going to be. So how long is it going to take for them to see results? And then the sacrifice and effort. So how much it's going to cost them, right? So this is the time delay of your product working and the sacrifice and effort from the client that you're talking to. And you want to make this as small as possible. So if you can make your product instant, of course, people are going to be more interested in instant as opposed to taking days or weeks. And as little as your customer has to sacrifice, or as little effort as your customer has to put in, of course, is going to make them a little bit more interested as well. So that's the explanation for the framework. And you can use that in this sentence. You can say we, or you can say your business name. We help our ideal client get to whatever the dream outcome is in whatever the time period is. Hopefully this is a small time period relative to the industry. Without, and then whatever the sacrifice or effort is that you probably will see from your competitors, or at least you can back it off a little bit and show the level of effort that's going to come with your innovation or what it is you're trying to sell, and increase the perceived likelihood of success. So we help whoever the client is get to the dream outcome, and you of course describe that in whatever time period. without having to give up, you know, whatever the sacrifice or the effort is here, and then show them the perceived likelihood of success. And I've got these all highlighted to sort of match the different pieces here together. Pick whichever framework makes the most sense to you. I know I did have to spend, or maybe I didn't have to, but I did spend some time explaining this. It may seem a little more complicated. And if you want to go with the Mad Lib option, please feel free to, again, use whichever makes the most sense for you. Fill that out, send it my way. I'll send it back out with some comments. And then next week, I'll give you an opportunity to share your one-sentence pitch. The other thing that I would like you to do, so first, one-sentence pitch. Second, start your registrations. If working with the government through SBIR or some other avenue is important for you or is something that you do see in the future of your business, go ahead and apply to sam.gov, or at least start that process. You might get stuck in a couple places. If you do, I would tell you to reach out to Apex Accelerators. I'll give you their information on the last slide. It's about 2 slides, I think. But reach out to them. They can help you out in far more detail than I can. And it can really take up to 6 weeks. I tend to see it in about 2 weeks from our clients, but go ahead and get that process started. And then I would encourage you, of course you don't have to, but I would encourage you to go out and take a look at all the resources that we have on our website. So I've got that listed here for you as well. Next week, we're going to talk about all the agencies that participate in SBIR, and we're going to give you some detail about each of them. We're not going to do deep dives into all of them. That would take more than the 5 weeks that we have allotted for this. But we are going to touch on all of them, give you an idea of what they're interested in so that you can find a good agency fit for you and your idea. We're also going to talk about scoping your proposed project. So what is scope? How do you make sure that you don't promise too much and deliver too little? Because that can be a problem. And how do you make sure that everything flows together through your application? Please, if you have any questions, reach out to me. My information is on the slide here. I will send out an email just as soon as I get this recording back. So I'll send out an email to everybody that has registered for this event. So as long as you've registered, you'll get an email from me later today, maybe tomorrow at the latest. If you don't get an email, let me know. I'll get you on the list. But between now and next week, please start those registrations if you're interested in SAM, or if you're interested in working with the government, start that registration with sam.gov. If you have any questions, here is the website for Apex Accelerators. Go ahead and go there. Find the representative that's closest to you. They'll help you out. And then work on that one-sentence pitch. So between now and next week, I hope to see all of your one-sentence pitches so that I can give you some feedback on it. And then we will start out with those next week. That's all I've got for you. I'm happy to hang out for just a little bit longer if anyone has any questions. If not, thank you for coming today, and I'll see you next week.